Environmental Site Assessments, Phase 1 and 2. From RSB, your environmental business partner. RSB Environmental is a full-service national environmental consulting firm specializing in turnkey environmental solutions and due diligence services. Our environmental consultants provide extensive experience with Phase 1 environmental site assessments, Phase 2 environmental testing, property condition assessments, and asbestos surveys in support of commercial real estate transactions or private owners. We are known for delivering excellent customer service, and we will complete even multi-site portfolios with short due dates. Your environmental business partner. Some of our services are Phase 1 environmental site assessments, Phase 2 environmental site assessments, Phase 3 environmental site assessments, remediation, property condition assessments, wetland delineation and permitting, litigation support services, expert witness testimony, asbestos and mold survey, noise and quality survey, American Disability Act Assessment, ADA, Desktop Environmental Report, Transaction Screen Assessment, Distressed Asset Management and Disposition, Due Diligence Investigations for Corporate Acquisitions, Brownfields Assessment and Remediation, Soil and Groundwater Remediation System. The purpose of a Phase 1 ESA. Phase 1 ESAs involves the review of historic and current operations, on-site and surrounding areas to evaluate environmental liabilities associated with the subject property. These assessments have become a routine part of the due diligence process prior to commercial real estate transactions. Lenders, realtors, and attorneys generally require that a Phase 1 ESA be conducted on all commercial real estate transactions above a threshold dollar amount. The following reasons draw significant importance to conducting a Phase 1 ESA. To satisfy CERCLA appropriate inquiry requirements for the innocent landowner defense, should contamination be found on the property at some time in the future. To evaluate business environmental risk. As a common-sense practice to determine the likelihood of soil or groundwater contamination, or of contamination within an existing structure on a property. The presence of any such contamination could devalue a property or incur future liability for the property owner. What is involved on a Phase 1 ESA? Site reconnaissance, regulatory database review, interviews with owners, occupants, or neighbors, historical land title records review, historical aerial photograph review, topographic map review, review of regional and local geology, review of regional and local soil conditions, preparation of a report containing findings and opinion of environmental professional. It does not involve sampling, analytical, or remediation activities, as in Phase 2. Does not involve policing, compliance, and/or enforcement issues. Non-standard scope of work. Typically, building materials are conducted within the standard scope of a Phase 1 ESA. However, concerns about business environmental risk frequently expand the standard scope. Standard non-scope considerations which the user may wish to assess as additional issues include asbestos-containing materials, radon, lead-based paint, lead in drinking water, wetlands, regulatory compliance, cultural and historic resources, industrial hygiene, health and safety, ecological resources, endangered species, indoor air quality, and high-voltage power lines. Features of a Phase 1. Historical aerials show geographical location, adjacent land use, industries, ground and surface water sources, and relevant landmarks and highways. Historical investigation, historical aerial photographs, building permits, planning records, topographical maps, sand-borne fire insurance maps, Department of Oil and Gas maps, title information, interview tenants and owners, interview state and local regulators, review provided reports, geological, geotechnical information, surface and groundwater identification, bedrock geology and topography, soil classification and implications, regulatory research, fire departments, state environmental agencies, federal environmental agencies, site investigation, site inspection of buildings, equipment, land, and surface water for signs of contamination and storage, handling of hazardous materials. Evaluative report includes recommendations, usually no further remedial action beyond identification required. Phase 1 report. Once all of the historical investigations, document review, and site inspection have been completed, the environmental professional will generate a report with conclusions of any concerns or identified wrecks found on the property. Recommendations about what actions, if any, are needed to address these concerns will be included in the report. Recognized environmental conditions, RECs, indicates that a known contamination have been impacted, either from the subject property or possibly from an off-site source. If no RECs were identified, this will generate a clean report and no further investigation is needed. If a REC is identified, the environmental professional usually recommends further actions. Phase 2 environmental site assessment activities normally starts to collect soil, groundwater, and/or soil vapor samples from the subsurface to analyze for the presence of contamination. Environmental concerns on a Phase 1. Hazardous material. A material that may, upon exposure, constitute an identifiable risk to human health or the natural environment. Asbestos, PCBs, lead, ozone-depleting substances. Contaminant. The presence in soil, air, water, groundwater, or structures of a material or condition that may adversely affect human health or the natural environment. Dioxins, furans, burning barrel ashes, oil, solvents. Land uses of concern, dry cleaners, gas stations, auto, vehicle repair, printing operations, and manufacturing. Phase 2 site assessment. If a Phase 1 ESA identifies potential contamination of the site by hazardous materials, a Phase 2 ESA may be recommended. The Phase 2 ESA includes sampling and laboratory analysis to confirm the presence of hazardous materials. Some of the tests that may be performed include superficial soil and water samples, subsurface soil borings, groundwater monitoring, well installation, sampling, and analysis. May be appropriate on neighboring properties as well to determine the presence of contamination. Drum sampling, if any were left on the property. Transformer, capacitor sampling for PCBs, testing for buried tanks and drums, testing of underground storage tanks. Depending on the results of the samples, the Phase 2 ESA should outline additional site investigation needs and potential remedial actions that may be required to clean up the property. Why do I need a Phase 1? Why Phase 1 environmental site assessments are important today, and why you should choose a reputable and reliable organization to conduct such assessments. Reduces business risk factors. Overseeing or ignoring the condition of the surrounding properties can impose negative consequences in the future. It is important to understand that contamination level with the respective level of the CERCLA liability. CERCLA liability can be devastating or dangerous to the property owners, which can cost in millions of dollars to fix. CERCLA will define who would be responsible for any liability and cleanup costs of sites contaminated with hazardous substances. Only a Phase 1 will protect you of this liability. Fulfilling the lender or broker requirements. When it comes to real estate business financing, the lenders will demand at least a Phase 1 ESA that provides details about the on-site and surrounding property operations that might potentially contaminate the subject property subsurface environment, soil type, geographical setting, historical facts, etc. The lenders, banks, significantly weigh Phase 1 ESAs to determine the amount of loan to sanction and the cash requirement of escrow account. There is no way to bypass a Phase 1 ESA if financing a deal through the bank. Why do I need a Phase 1? Better environmental survey. The Phase 1 ESAs provide valuable information about the potential sources of contamination. It can be past operations on the site, or a leaking petroleum tank on gas station adjoining. The factual description is provided for the cause of contamination and potential risk involved. Since a site inspection is mandatory as part of this assessment, the inspector can visually evaluate the conditions on site and surrounding areas. There is no other survey that delivers a comprehensive detail like Phase 1 ESA. Therefore, it is included and preferred to be performed as due diligence work corresponding to the real estate deals. Why RSB Environmental? RSB Environmental is the national leader in Phase 1 environmental site assessments by volume. All our reports are completed to meet the standards of ASTM E152713. RSB Environmental often customizes reports to meet individual client or agency lenders, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, requirements, while taking the widely varying geology and topography of the region into consideration. Lender approved and accepted. Licensed engineering firm. Fast turnaround. 7 to 10 business days. Competitive pricing. $1 million professional liability insurance. Completed thousands of Phase 1, Phase 2 ESAs. Here are some of our due diligence clients. Here is your RSB environmental team. Sachin, technically proficient, licensed engineer with strong academic and work credentials, career-minded individual with dynamic experience contributing environmental engineering focused results across a diversity of businesses. Nirav, senior project manager in the Houston office and specializes in conducting environmental site assessments, property condition assessments, environmental compliance, and permitting. Nilay has more than 8 years serving public and private sector clients with property condition assessments, construction monitoring, structural steel detailing, indoor air quality assessments, and environmental site assessments. Ephraim, Mr. Trejo has been conducting site visits for Phase 1, Phase 2, asbestos survey, and property condition assessments, PCAs. Contact RSB Environmental today.